All right. Well, welcome. This afternoon, I'm excited to present Grant Writing 101 with Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom. My name is Beth Schaefer, and I'm the Ag in the Classroom coordinator for Wisconsin. But most importantly, I've been writing and reviewing grants for about 15 years. So I started writing grants when I was an agriculture instructor and moved into the role of parent and supporter, and now a larger role with Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom. So been writing grants, reading grants, and rereading grants for a long time, and I'm excited to share some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way that have helped me be successful and helped my volunteers and committees be successful as well. So before we start, I want to ask, what makes you motivated to support a cause? So you can drop this in the chat or you can come off, but just real quickly, what motivates you to say yes, to give your time, your talent, your treasure, and thinking about where you put your resources?
What do you think? I'll type it in. To help the children. Yeah. Oops.
Okay. We feel passionate. I see we feel passionate about the cause. I think that's everyone kind of conveyed that in their responses as to what they're looking for today. Making the resource available to kids and making a better experience for them. Yeah, definitely. That's a motivator. I think education in general tends to be very high on the motivation scale when it comes to giving resources and time and talent. So the reason I bring this up is because when we think about grant writing, we're really thinking about convincing someone or motivating someone to give us money and support our cause. And so the real purpose of a grant is, of course, to support the causes that we have in Ag in the Classroom, specifically agriculture and student engagement. But when we think about just general overall grant applications, there's really two pieces to it. The first one is to convince that third party, that grantor, to give you money, give you time, give you money, invest in your cause. But the second one is to build trust and community with that granting organization. So that's what we're going to focus on. The first couple of sections here is what we have shared values and how this will be important in completing the grant application. So Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom exists as part of a national organization, and we solely exist to increase agricultural literacy in grades pre-K through 12 by improving student achievement through the use and context of agriculture to support core curriculum concepts. And I'll let you read that whole thing. But really, we exist to help grow awareness and understanding of how agriculture impacts our students every single day. And that helps us fulfill our vision of agriculture being valued by all. And agriculture in the classroom wants to be the trusted go-to resource for educators and volunteers so that we can build that trust and build that community to help reach the goal or the vision of agriculture being valued by all. And notice I didn't say making everyone agriculture experts, but thinking about building that basic connection of making a student aware that they are connected to agriculture in some capacity every day. So the reason that what we do to achieve that at Ag in the Classroom is we provide lessons and resources, teacher trainings and events, and grants and scholarships, which leads us to why we are here today for the Ag in All Classrooms grant application, which is due January 16th. So I already alluded to this, but the two priorities in writing a grant is to motivate your granting organization to support you and demonstrate you can be trusted with their money. And I think that when it boils down to it, I think we have that basis kind of covered. So we're going to really focus more on that section 1 of how to motivate and share your story so that your grant is really effective and is easily read and understood by the panel of judges. So I should note that while I'm in charge of the grant program, I am not the judge. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me as you write your grant. I'm more than happy to provide feedback or give some tips and tricks. We do recruit volunteers, partner businesses, and other employees at Wisconsin Farm Bureau and Wisconsin Farm Bureau Foundation to help judge those grant applications. And what we're going to do in the next 20 minutes or so is we're going to walk through what that application looks like. We're going to take a review of the rubric that judges will score off of and that you can use as kind of a checklist as you write your grant. And then we're going to look at some examples of grants that have been submitted that are just really solid examples of what you should be looking for as you write your grant. So that's our goal. So we're going to start with at the very beginning, which is the very first part of writing a grant is you read and then you reread what's called the request for proposal. On our website, it says grant criteria. So we want to make sure that we read and reread to understand all the requirements, note the deadlines, as well as any exclusions. And I say exclusions because the Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom grant is not available to those organizations that charge for tours or are a for-profit business. We really cater to nonprofits. It doesn't mean you can't make money. It just means that your goal should be solely education or agriculture literacy. Or schools and projects that are happening within schools. So that's an exclusion for this particular grant, but I feel like we've got that covered with who we have today. So I want to talk a little bit about the grant criteria for the Ag in All Classroom grant. If you've been to our website, which I hope you have, you've seen that our application is up and is ready for submissions and for entry. You do have the opportunity to enter your responses and then save and come back. But just note that there is a different link that's included in that overview of where to come back to. So as you begin to review the criteria for the grant, again, noting that the project must impact directly students in pre-K through grades 12 in Wisconsin. It doesn't say Wisconsin, but I guess I'll have to make it more specific, but Wisconsin schools. The proposal should enhance student knowledge of the contribution made by agriculture as described in one of the National Agricultural Literacy Outcomes. So the National Ag Literacy Outcomes are basically how we think of applying agriculture to Common Core curriculum. So agriculture in the environment, plants, animals, food, fiber, and energy, food, health, and lifestyle, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and then culture, society, economy, and geography. So it's a really broad range of ways that you can incorporate an agriculture project into your curriculum or your school or into your day on the farm, which are some of the examples shared today. The proposed projects should reach a larger number of students. We'll give preference to larger numbers, but we're also looking for innovative approaches. So if it's something new or you want to try test something out that you saw or learned about in it, from another state or you saw online, we're definitely open to that. Even if it's not a huge impact, we are all about innovation and idea sharing. And then, of course, we also fund continuing or annual projects. But if you are submitting a proposal for an event that has already happened, you should show plans for improvement or how it's going to expand or how the grant will help you achieve maybe another goal or another classroom or another bus, whatever it might be, to continually engage students and grow awareness and understanding of agriculture. So I also want to point out under the criteria, this is open to formal and non-formal educators. So volunteer groups, nonprofit groups, parent groups can write, teachers can write. This is open to the gamut, but but again, thinking, keeping in mind what the criteria is, focusing on those 5 areas of the agricultural literacy outcomes. So before you apply, you'll always want to ask yourself these 3 questions. Are we eligible for the grant? Oh, can you still see? Sorry, guys. There we go. Sorry, my screen just switched. I apologize. So now that we kind of reviewed the criteria for the grant, let's just run through these 3 quick questions. Are you eligible? Do you meet the criteria for the grant? It's either yes or no. It's pretty easy. The second question is does the project share or support the mission and values of the grantor? So if your project revolves around agriculture, understanding where food and fiber come from, any of the national agricultural literacy outcomes, you totally definitely align with the mission and values. And then the third question is there an existing program or organization or classroom already doing a similar project? And I ask this because it gives you a chance to say what you learned from that organization or that project, maybe explain why it doesn't work to partner, or if it in a classroom situation, how that specific program could benefit your specific classroom or surrounding classrooms. But again, it's not necessarily a negative if there's an existing program. It's just an opportunity to share how you are different and how your project or your program will improve or meet your very specific needs in your community or your classroom. So it's again, we haven't written anything yet, but this is just thinking about like if this is a good fit. And clearly you guys are a good fit for the Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom grant. But I throw this out there because we do share other grants from time to time. And this is just a good litmus test if it's worth your time to dive in and apply for more funds. Or if it's not a good fit, you can pass and wait for the next one. All right, so the Wisconsin Ag in All Classrooms grant is scored pretty simply. It's really in 5 bucket areas. And what we're going to do is we're going to review and walk through them. And I apologize that the screen is a little bit blurry, but it's because I literally screenshotted it from the application, so I had the exact wording to share with you. So the grant scores work as follows. The goals and objectives of the project are 20% of the overall score. So it's a fifth, it's a chunk. The description of proposed project and how it enhances student awareness of agriculture is 40%. This is by far the biggest component of the grant and where you should really be spending some time and being able to explain how the project connects students with agriculture and increases learning. The itemized budget summary is also another chunk of the grant, which is 20%. That's explaining what you're going to purchase or use the money for to achieve the project goals that you shared above. So right now we're sitting at 80% of the score is these 3 categories. So that should tell you that they are really 3 of the most important areas to spend time and energy on. Other important things include the project timetable, which is kind of the timeline of how you plan to complete the project and start and finish. And then we have methods used to measure success of the project so that you can report if you met your goals. And then the last chunk is listing any partners or individuals that are involved in the proposed project. And then there is an unscored question that is important. It's a 100-word summary of the project that we will use for press releases and promotional purposes and include on our website along with your wrap-up of your grant so that we can share all the great ideas that come in and meet our goal of increasing innovation and ideas in ag literacy. All right. Are there any questions thus far on the grant scoring overview and the criteria for the grant? All right. Well, we'll keep cruising then. So first and foremost are the goals and objectives for the grant. This section is 20% of the total score. And it's the grants that we offer are up to $500. So when thinking about the goals and objectives, really 2 to 3 objectives are about the max you're going to be able to do with $500. We really want to focus on hitting those 2 or 3 things. And really kind of keeping it clean, because the more objectives you have, the more you have to show throughout your whole grant of how you're going to meet those objectives and how you're going to measure the objectives. So I really recommend keeping it simple, no more than 2 to 3 objectives. And in this, I have a little pro tip built in, because I've recently finished reading grants for a national award, or rather a national grant. And I can't tell you how many of those goals and objectives I read that did not include increasing student awareness or understanding of agriculture. So make sure that as you write that grant, you have a goal in there, an objective that is going to, it doesn't specifically have to be worded increasing student awareness and understanding of agriculture, but there should be a goal or objective related to students learning something about agriculture. So make sure you use the A word in there somewhere to really show that your program and project supports agriculture awareness and literacy. All right. So I pulled out an example that was submitted to Wisconsin Ag in the Classroom. This is from a grant application that was approved and did receive funding. So I wanted to show just what she wrote, or what this school wrote for their goals and objectives. And as you can see, it is not fancy, it's not long, and it's really straightforward. So the first goal was to enhance students' understanding of the importance of farm-to-table products and supporting our local farmers. Number 2, increase academic achievement through hands-on engagement. And 3, teach students about sustainability through the growth and maintenance of their own food. I know they sound a little vague, but what I really like about this is not a professional grant writer, but they're really straightforward objectives. And you're going to see the rest of this application as we walk through, so you can see kind of how it all ties together. All right. So the second portion of the grant is the project description and impact on student agricultural literacy. This is 40% of the total score. And this is, like I said, this is really a big chunk of where you need to spend some time. So the purpose of this area is to explain how the resources that you want the grant to support and purchase are pivotal to student learning and awareness of agriculture. So the best way it was ever described to me, I took a grant writing class, a master's class, and the professor said, you are not writing for things. You are writing to sell a program, and the things support the program. So it's almost a little backwards of what you would think writing should look like, but you really are looking to share the need for the project or the program, and then build your case for the items you need to purchase with the grant. And I'll explain this. You'll see this in just one slide once we get there. So for this particular project, it was called Chickology, and it would give the students an opportunity to grow chicks from an egg. It explains all the things they're going to study, the nutrition, where it fits in it all, how they're going to use technology in farming, and they're going to learn responsibility. And then once they explain the purpose of the project and why their students need it, then they say how they're going to use the dollars to purchase the tools to hatch the chicks so that the kids can care for them, and what's going to happen to all of the chicks once they hatch. And then what I really like about this is that there's a kind of it shows how these students will use that information and apply it throughout their next couple of years, because they're a feeder school into an agriculture school. Not everybody's situation is the same, but what's great about this implementation, this project example, is it really gives a nice overview of the purpose of the program and what's going to happen. And then it focuses on the needs, the actual like stuff you got to get from the grant. And then it ends with what's, the outcomes for the students. So it's not fancy by any means, but it's kind of short and sweet, but it gets the job done. And it really lets the person reading this understand the whole program. So there's definitely some revisions, I think, that went into this, but I like this example because it's not terribly fancy. So once you have your kind of these are our goals, this is how we're going to do it, then you get to the section called the itemized budget, and that is 20% of the grant. And what this is the list of items and cost. And I encourage you to be as specific as possible for the cost that would be covered by the grant. So it does not have to be a paragraph. This is not a narrative. So you can just list your expenses and your estimates. And we understand this is we don't have language the way that some grants do, that you can only go 10% over this way or that way. We are very much on the honor system that if you are applying and completing this application, that's how your funds will intend to be spent. Obviously, we've seen things happen over the years. I had someone who, their building changed. They couldn't implement the program exactly how they thought, and we worked on it. So it's not, we are not a government language grant. You can work with us if you need to make any changes or adaptations to the proposed budget. But really, that budget lets us know that you've put some time and thought into what you need and how it's going to support your plan. So that pro tip is, it just indicates that there might be other costs, because I have read grant applications where they are talking about a $10,000 project and they're only asking us for 500. And so it's really hard to understand how, if we give them money, like, will they be able to complete the whole project? So if you have a bigger project and you are expecting in-kind, like maybe your Farm Bureau is supporting, or the school PTA or PTO might be throwing in dollars, please share that somewhere in that budget so that we know that if your costs are higher than the grant will provide, that you can get that project done. Okay, so here's the example that was shared from the Chickology. This was her whole budget. So she listed out all of the things that she would need to be able to catch out those chicks and grow them and get them to that next step where they left the school. So lots of different things listed in there. But I mean, even all the way down to pet wipes and the shavings and then, tablecloth. So really, this is a really detailed budget in thinking about what she would need to do this in her classroom. So I really wanted to share this particular budget because it's, again, nothing fancy, but it's very complete and very specific. All right, so next up is the project timetable. It's 5%, so it's not as big of a point piece, but it is still important. So project timetables should have specific dates and locations to show that you have a solid plan. This can be a list, so it can really be just a timeline. You don't have to write a whole huge paragraph, but making sure you hit those key dates, like when you plan to start, when the event will be, are you going to have a wrap up? Are there certain reservations or certain materials that need to be ordered by certain dates? Again, this is a $500 grant, so it doesn't have to be 10 pages. I mean, this can be very concise, but it should be specific to note that one, that you have an understanding of how long the project will take. And two, we want to make sure that this fits into the project, to the grant timetable of being completed by summer of 2024. So we want to make sure that we're funding something that can realistically happen and get in and get done and get kids engaged and be wrapped up by the end of the school year or during summer school. And then the other piece that can be forgotten sometimes on the timetable is thinking about including time for reflection and wrap up. I've been a part of committees for a long time, and I know that there's always a wrap up meeting, and that's where you can really reflect as the planners. You can take your informal feedback and discuss, but it's also a place where you might be looking for surveys or whatever other feedback as a collective group. So make sure that that's included in that timetable is some time to reflect and complete your grant report. So the summary that was shared by, whoops, this is not the right one. What happened to my slide? I had a great slide here to share with you. I think I got ahead. There we go. Okay, so this was the timetable example from the Chocology application. As you can see, she didn't list it out as per my suggestion, but she didn't know specifically she knew when she wanted to start the project and she knew how long it was going to take. And she explained it. So she didn't want to start it before spring break. She knew she could come in before the kids got back. So she said, April 11th, we're going to start. It's going to allow us the time to hatch. It's going to give us time to enjoy the chicks. And it's going to give us the time to reflect on the project and get it submitted before the due date. So again, I would like to see this a little more specific, but she definitely got the job done in demonstrating that she knew how long the project was going to take, and that there might need to be some flexibility with getting the equipment set up and making sure that the eggs were all arrived and all of the other things. So again, you can list it, but this is just an example of how she showed she was going to meet her timeline before the end of school and before that grant report was due. All right, so the next bucket is project metrics, and I think this is the question. This is the one that I get the most questions on, because sometimes you don't get your metrics right away, or you're not sure how to what is success. So the project metrics portion of the grant is to basically show how you plan to demonstrate if you had success or maybe not had success with your program or your project. And this is important because you need to be able to report that back to Ag in the Classroom, or if it's another grant to that organization. So examples of project metrics could be surveys. I heard a day on the farm. If you're doing a day on the farm, it could just be a teacher survey. It doesn't have to be all the students. It could be informal feedback that you hear from students or teachers, or you could ask students to write reflections on the day, what they learned, what was their favorite part. Really, all you're doing is you're looking for that way to show that you had impact and that project had impact, and meaning to the students or to the schools or whomever you worked with. For teachers doing classroom projects, sometimes they get a lot more formal feedback, and you'll see that in just a second. But if you're struggling to think about how you're going to report the project metrics, circle back to what you wrote the goals of the project were, and then think about how you would show and measure those goals. And again, I want to emphasize that it doesn't have to all be research papers or increased test scores, or it can be informal, because some of these projects, some of the projects that we get in aren't conducive to hard surveys or tests or projects, but rather it's maybe it's a lab setting, or maybe it's an experience. But thinking about how you can show you hit your goals with that and with the end project. So thinking about how you're going to show that you reached it or you didn't. And the picture I have on the slide, I will explain because it's a weird picture to show for project metrics. But this was from a project that I recently completed, where one of the project metrics I can't turn in for another 6 months because it's tied to another project. So if you're in that situation where if it's a day on the farm and you want to see if more students complete the essay contest, be sure to tie that in. Or if it's a chicken project, such as the one that we've seen the example of, thinking about, if more students take animal science, there's certain metrics that you're just probably not going to have time to report. So do your best for those close metrics, and down the road, maybe you'll have that opportunity to share the bigger ones. So these were the metrics reported by, or I'm sorry, the metrics example given with the Chickology. So this was a classroom teacher. So I want to point that out because, again, not everybody's going to have formal assessments or be able to measure student engagement on a consistent basis. But she listed that she was going to have a research project on nutrition, farm to table, etc. I would like to see a little more on a metrics example. So I pulled in another example from a different application. Sorry for changing themes on you. But this was another application written by a teacher. And again, she kind of wrote out her plan for evaluation. And this happened to be a school garden proposal. And she explained how the students would survey, and they would use those survey results to plan the garden for the following year. And so that implementation of using what they learned, applied to future plans, that's a great way to show what students learned and that they were engaged in the project. All right, so the last little chunk of the grant application is partnering organizations. This is really, it seems small, it seems kind of strange, but listing the partners on your project really helps build awareness and understanding of the scope and how you're working across maybe other classrooms or other departments in the school, or with similar organizations or partner farms, or whoever you might be, but showing that you are looking to grow and have multiple hands in on the project. And if you're not partnering with someone, which sometimes that is the case because you've been doing it a long time and you're like a well-oiled machine, just briefly list why that is. And if it's because there are no other volunteers, I've seen that as well, and I understand that. So just make sure that you acknowledge the question and give it a response either way. And again, this is one of those pieces. It doesn't have to be a big, huge paragraph. You can list the organizations, and it is helpful if you include a short sentence as to how they're supporting. And I don't have an example of that one. Again, it's simple. If it's one or two people or businesses, just list them and include that simple sentence or two. So that's the scored part of the application. Do we have any questions on those categories that are scored in the rubric? Okay. All right. So the last section, which is actually listed first on the application, however you plan it out, is a 100-word summary of the project. And that is exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for the who, the what, the why, the where, the when, and the how. And we ask for this summary, one, to give the judge just a quick overview or a quick reminder of your project or program. And two, it's actually really functional. If you receive a grant, we do use it in our press releases, and we do use that 100 words summary, ideas and innovation. So the or I like to call it the press release style, so that you include your organization name, your school name, um, again, the who, the what, the why, the when, the where, the how, and keep Wisconsin. But they said that what the event was, the goal is to move our event from 247 kids to 300 this year. They plan to educate children on proper animal safety and handling and provide emotional support through children reading to the animals. We have a goal that every child leaves with a new book, agriculture animal knowledge gained, and a fun time with an animal craft project. We plan to partner with other school clubs and activities to have a successful event. For a great summary, this is the formula I would follow. This was a really well written summary. So with that, I kind of hit all of the pieces, but I did want to quickly share the rubric with you, and I can email that out to you afterwards as well. But I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to see what the rubric is. And I apologize because what the rubric is basically it gives the point value for each of these these 6 categories, and how the judges can rate and rank them. So with that, I know we're really close on time. We started a few minutes late, and we're ending a few minutes late, and I don't want to go over too much, but I do want to allow for any questions that you have. I am going to Are you all still there? Okay, so this is the my information, and I'm going to stop recording at this point in time.